Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a well respected international expert on intuition and perception. She is a gifted clairvoyant and a pioneer in the intuition development movement. She has worked around the world as a coach and trainer to business and government leaders, psychologists, scientists, and those on a spiritual path since 1977. She has been affiliated with the Center for Applied Intuition, the Institute for the Study of Conscious Evolution, the Arlington Institute, the Kaiser Institute, and many others. She has led Vision Quest tours, hosted a TV talk show, and appeared on radio and television interview shows internationally. She is the author of over 10 books, including her most recent entitled Transparency, Seeing Through to Our Expanded Human Capacity. Welcome to the show, Penney Peirce.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. I'm glad you're here. It was really been, I can't remember who connected me. Somebody connected me to your work, and it's always a treat when I get to look at what someone's been doing, and you've been in the space for so long.
Yeah.
Such an incredible body of work. So I was really excited to have you on and share your work and insights and everything. So thank you for coming on.
That's great. I love your whole idea of the Zen athlete and all the things you're doing too. So, and your whole attitude about it feels very, light and deep also. So my pleasure.
Thank you. Well, yeah, we want to try to keep it fun, like the personal development and the consciousness, and because it can be pretty interesting in this field when you get into psychic powers and intuition and all that kind of thing. Do you want to just give people a little bit about your background and some of the incredible work you've done and kind of how you got to where you are today, and then we can go into any number of things: intuition, psychic power,
Right.
Dreaming. You just a wealth
it's sort
of knowledge.
endless.
Yeah.
I think about my background as kind of in a way, an inspiring story, because it's not abnormal. Do you know what I mean? It's like anybody could do this. Some people who are like really psychic or something, they had some dramatic story that they hit their head or they did some crazy thing and then opened up dramatically into these gifts. But mine was very gradual. And I grew up moving around the country a lot. About every 2 years, my family moved, and I got to see. I lived on a farm in Kansas and rode horses, and then I was in the North Shore of Chicago in a Jewish community, and then I've been everywhere. I mean, all kinds of different things that I think got me very open at an early age to every kind of person, And I was really into art. So I think I kept my intuition open somehow by drawing and painting and writing. And I went to school for design, interior design, and then graphic design, and became a corporate art director. And I worked at some very big companies, and then that just naturally morphed into the next thing, where I went to get a degree at Cal Arts in Los Angeles, which was a very new school when I started going there. And they had a special experimental program called social design, which was really odd because they combined regular designers, like industrial designers and architects and city planners and everything, with social scientists, like psychologists and stuff. So we did things like redesign the funeral, redesign the doctor-patient relationship, redesign the elevator so people would talk to each other inside of it. So you had to use your intuition a lot to get these weird, rethink things. I guess that was the kind of training I needed, because you couldn't grow up to just say, I'm going to be an intuitive when I grow up, because it didn't exist, So, but it was like, you have to trust your soul, I think, because you do lead yourself into the right paths and connect with the right people to know what you need next, and then I got transferred up to San Francisco right when the whole, human development, personal growth movement was happening, and got into all that. And so it was a very exciting, active time then, because so many things were birthing. And I was right in the middle of it. So, and then that just grew and grew and grew and grew. And I went to Japan, and I worked, did teaching and training over there for like 20 years. So it's just amazing. Yeah. So, and then I started writing books. I guess I always said to myself, what's the next courageous thing?
Mm.
Like, okay, I did this already and I could keep doing it, but that's kind of boring now. So like, what's the next big courageous thing that would push my boundaries? So I'm not an athlete, but in a way, my mind is geared up that way to, push through limitations. Yeah. And that's just the way I keep going at it. I don't figure, I don't know if you're ever enlightened. You know what I mean? You just keep on looking for the next expansion beyond the level that you're at. So that's my attitude. And I figure it's okay to describe where you are right now, because somebody's there with you, at that level. And then you'll go on to the next level, and somebody will be there when you get to that level. So I always tell people, just start where you are and offer what you've got, because then you'll grow.
Mm.
That's a long-winded explanation, but that's, I think the design stuff actually prepared me very much to be the kind of intuitive that I am, because when I look at somebody's life, I would always see it as a kind of design problem. It's like, okay, here's the soul. They want to incarnate. They want to accomplish certain lessons and integrate certain kinds of things in this life. And how are they going to do it? And how they engineer the experiences to get all these things to happen, to me, is just amazing. And I never get tired of looking at that stuff, because it's so surprising with the way people build their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and I love how you use the word engineer. It sounds so much better. Engineering, because it
yeah,
is, right, creating your life.
It is. And it does function according to universal principles and most kind of mathematical principles, So to me, it's not real woo-woo and out there. It's very practical,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%, and necessary. Well, you've read, or not read, you've written books that I'm interested in reading all of them. You have The Intuitive Way, Frequency, Leap of Perception, which, I, doing what I do, understand the power of perception. It's everything. Yeah. And then your most recent is Transparency, which just got released maybe 2 days ago.
Yeah.
October 10th. Was that right?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Congratulations. So do you want to maybe, is it like linear in what's being taught in all these books? Are there similar principles, or do you want to maybe go into, because there's obviously going to be a lot there. What's in those books? What are we, what are you guiding people through? What are the gist of some of those?
I think it's like a time release capsule. Like the books came to me in the moment when I think the world was at a certain frequency, and so the material that could come through matched that vibration and fit. And then I'd wait a year or two, and then I'd be at a different level. The world would be at a different level, and a new kind of information would come through. And so the books are a process, I believe, of all about personal transformation. And I believe that we are going through a really profound transformation process right now, not just change, but I mean, really, the way we're perceiving reality is going through a major shift. Like if you went from the point to the line, which is a bunch of points in a row, and then from the line to the plane, which is a bunch of lines in a row, and then from the plane to the cube, which is a bunch of planes in a row. Now what? Now we're going to something that's beyond the three-dimensional world. And what is that going to be? And how do I explain that to people? And how is it going to feel? And that's what's kind of captured my attention for so many years, is to get these puzzle pieces so that I could understand them and then translate that higher knowledge into something that's doable for people so that they understand, hey, there is a process to this. It's not random. We're not going crazy. We are going through a process that will end up where we're very clear at the end. And that's why transparency is coming now toward the end of this process, because I think we are becoming clear because we're trying to clear our fear away from ourselves, just dissolve it so that nothing's in the way. And then when that happens, we start to realize more and more, hey, wait a minute, I'm the soul. I'm not just my personality or my left brain, I'm the whole thing. And nothing is in my way. And so what happens when that happens? Then we're really pretty unlimited in what we can create, how much love we can give. It's going to be amazing. And I think we're going to experience it in our lifetimes. We're going to experience a lot of it in our lifetimes. That's why it's so kind of cool to be alive right now.
Yeah, I
So,
totally agree.
Yeah.
I see the I've heard it with past guests in the conversations that I'm in is this this great awakening or increased perception or whatever the case is. I just got back from Egypt with the Resonance Science Foundation, and
Cool.
some of it, actually a lot of it, I'm not even allowed to talk about, but really interesting. And it was around these, I've heard in the Ascension or whatever, we're going to get new color, we're going to get new sounds, we're going to get all these new things, this expansion of awareness.
Yeah.
And there was a presentation on how we're going to get 3 new numbers, and that's all I can say, but it was very very interesting. So you're kind of I see this transformation as almost the butterfly analogy, where caterpillars going into a butterfly to a whole new dimension. It's really beyond what we can perceive now. So I like how you touched on fear, because I feel I've heard it said that we're clearing all our old karma in this life. I've heard that said. I've heard we're transitioning through fear, same but different.
Yeah.
I'd like to get your process on just something for me or someone out there, like if they're going through this process, do you have some practical tips? Because I imagine you do, on really going through that transformation and getting rid of that, so then you're open to receiving and perceiving something new.
Exactly. Well, I've got the 4 books now on this whole thing, so they're very
4 books in 2 paragraphs, please.
Right. No, I mean, the first book, The Intuitive Way, I think really is part of the first thing we need to do is develop our intuitive skills. We need to move out of the left brain into the right brain, into the body, really make friends with that direct knowing that we can have without all the chatter of the mind. The left brain is always talking. It's always language. So you've got to be able to shift out of that into the right brain, which is direct immersion into the moment. There's no separation. You know everything all at once. It's total interconnection. But you almost have to have the left brain to interrupt the right brain in order to have a focus or to know something specific. But in order to access wisdom, you've got to get into the right brain, and that is pattern orientation, right? Well, at least I do. I get kind of impressed by large patterns of knowledge. They come into my field and then I get it all at once. And then the skill is I have to translate that over into my left brain so I can talk about it and write about it, make sense of it, into something that's sequential. But really it's all at once. So it's kind of weird because we're in a time period where things still are linear, because that's what we've been trained to think: past, present, future, cause and effect. If I do this, then I'll have this, or I have a goal, I'll use willpower to get my goal, and it's over there on a line separated from me. But now we're moving into this immediate present moment spherical kind of reality where everything's inside a big ball. We are a sphere of consciousness, and that sphere kind of expands and contracts, but we never leave the center of it, and there is no outside world, and everything's interconnected, and that's what's changing the way reality is going to actually function. And this gets pretty heady, I know, but I've really explained it in detail in my books, and usually also I give a lot of exercises and things to do so people can actually physically experience what I'm talking about. Um, but I mean, just to give you a tiny bit more of explanation, I feel like, the physical world, the earth has been accelerating for many, 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 many years, but in recent years, faster and faster and faster. And that means our bodies are vibrating faster. That means our emotions are getting agitated and vibrating faster, and our minds are starting to think different thoughts. And it's just like you were saying. I mean, I've led 2 tours to Egypt. I know about Egypt. Um, I can see why we would be getting new colors or sounds or numbers. It's not that they're new. It's that we're at a level where we can actually perceive them. We're getting into a level where understanding reality's functioning in such a more elegant, higher way that it's magical almost, you know, and it's going to be so wonderful, so effortless. Um, and but we're just, getting the first glimpse of what that could feel like, I think, at this point. And a lot of people are resisting it. They don't want to change, and so I see that we're sort of in this part of the process right now where we're clearing fear, meaning, I mean, my theory is that the subconscious mind, is the place where we've always pushed everything down and said, I don't want to have to look at this, and denied experience and suppressed it. And it used to be able to stay there because it was such a low frequency. But now the whole frequency of the earth has gone up and there's no low frequency like that anymore. So the fears can't stay in storage, right? So they're popping up to the surface like popcorn going off. And and where they're coming is into the conscious mind. So that means daily reality. That means suddenly you have a reenactment of some awful thing that you didn't want to have to face from a past life or from childhood, and oh, here it is again. I thought I had got rid of that. No, now you have to face it, go through it, see how you only perceived it partially in the past, and how you locked it down by being contracted around it, and open it and soften it and release it. And the more you do that, the more of the soul comes through. And it's intense process right now because everybody's releasing their fear at the same time. Right? And it's not only in individuals, it's in relationships, in families, in nations. I mean, the collective subconscious mind is clearing too. So look at the news. That's current events. That's our political, administration now. And a lot of things are surfacing that have to be seen and cleared. So it looks awful out there, but we really need it to come to the surface so we can get rid of it. Do you know what I mean? It's I think a natural part of the process.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree. I've heard that in many ways that are the exact same or similar. In as regards to like the shadow, right? A lot of times it's referred to as shadow work, and I think people can get a little bit confused on that. It's really just not sticking it in the corner, just kind of accepting it as part of you. You don't need to dwell on it. That's not the
Yeah,
point. It's just to
yeah,
accept it and acknowledge it and move through it. Kind of like a
yeah,
hole, and then you're
yeah,
going through that, you're going through it. You don't try to dodge it
yeah,
or stick it in a corner. Like, okay,
yeah,
cool. You see it and you acknowledge it and you move through as a part of you. You know what I
yes,
mean? And you can also even be grateful for it. And then as you do that, that's how you clear it. You don't have to
right.
do 4 magic steps and go east, west, north, south, and drop a feather and sage yourself. Although you can if you want, it's really great. I do stuff like that all the time. It's fun.
Yeah,
But the process is just honestly looking at it, going through it, and if there's self-forgiveness that you need to do, whatever's going to come up, right, going through that honest process. And I think it really will come back to self-love, self-forgiveness, forgiveness of the other who harmed you, in the best way you know how.
yeah. But
um,
that's the natural state anyway. Our sense of um, interconnectedness and mutual support and love and compassion that's who we are basically. We got that covered over with fear. I think that to clear those fears, you're right. You just go into it, but um, there's a feeling before you can do that. You have to let yourself feel vulnerable, like a parent to a child. The child's skinned his knee, and he's crying, and you go, oh, it's not so bad here, it's all right, tell me what's happened. And you're the one who's talking to your own body and your own emotions, who are stuck on this, contracted, panicky place. You say, hey, it's okay. Look, it was just a dog that barked in your face. It's fine. Um, and when you get the understanding, which comes after you've allowed yourself to feel vulnerable, and you let yourself kind of see it from the God's eye view or the parent's eye view, um, things just go, oh gosh, that was so silly. That's nothing. Now I see the whole picture. And when you see the whole picture, it just poofs. And the energy that was contained in that is released, and it goes back into the unified field so it can be recombined into new creations. And now you're much more open. You receive more of the true self, which then makes you stronger so you can pull in more of the fear and clear more of it. And it just happens like that for a while until you realize, hey, I don't even care about fear. Like, I'm a soul. I don't even recognize fear. It doesn't exist in my reality. And I think that's what we're doing right now. And that is the process of becoming transparent, actually, right?
Mm.
Because, when you get rid of your clutter, it's, that's making us opaque, meaning that the soul's light can't get through. I often think of, like, we're sort of like a sieve. You've got holes in this thing that covers us over. The holes are where we have love and understanding and clarity, and that means the soul can come through that and make the personality up with that amount of love and wisdom. But the solid spaces are where there's still fear, and then that blocks the larger vision from coming through. So every time you clear one of those things, you make another hole, and more light comes through, and you get stronger and stronger in your sense of self. It takes a while sometimes but I think that because things are getting so fast right now and everything's coming into the present moment, that we can heal almost instantaneously now. We can almost talk to our inner self and say, look, I'm sick of having karma. I don't really need it. I can just, let's let this go. And I'm going to be really observant in the present moment, and anything I need to know, I'm going to pay attention to it. I'm going to act on it. So just, give it to me when I need it. And I don't have to have you remind me about acting out my past mistakes, you know? And I think that inner self, we can really drop the karma, you know? Um, I think some really miraculous kind of things are going to start happening, like very instantaneous healing, materialization of realities that you want, dematerialization of things you don't need. Um, yeah. And
I
probably new gifts, like spiritual gifts and things. What were you
mhm.
going to say?
On that note, I have seen other people experience that. So that's already been in my field. I've observed
Yeah.
it in others, which I
Hmm.
find interesting. And I think we just need to own that reality in the same way as like the 4 minute mile. Nobody can break the 4 minute mile. Somebody breaks the
Exactly.
4 minute mile, but it's just a little bit of a
Yeah.
bigger gap. It's like a fifth dimensional kind of gap.
Hmm.
But I wanted to offer an analogy that I've kind of come across where our body is holding all the memory of our lives in the body, and
Yeah.
our body is a form of consciousness. And when we have a traumatic experience, like your daily life just going through, you might, the whole day might be half a gig of memory, but let's say
Hmm.
you have a trauma that might be like 8 gigs stored in your liver or your heart,
Right.
right? and
Right.
and
Right.
that's density, right? Fear,
It
if you think
is
about
a
when you're fear,
density.
you are low and you are
Yeah.
dense. The vibration is low and slow.
It's a
But light
contraction.
and love, it's a contraction, and
Yeah.
light and love is expansion. So in that analogy, it's almost freeing up the hard drive space of your body. And so a lot of the high level stuff that I've been looking into talks about how your body activates, that your hands will just start doing things where you'll get up, and I've had a friend describe this to me where he's like, my body got up and started moving, and I didn't know why, but I
Yeah.
just observed it, and I was like, that is so trippy, just to have your body get up and start moving as its own intelligence. But if you think about it, the body is perceiving, and the unconscious mind is
That's
perceiving way more
It's
than your
so
conscious
connected
mind.
to flows and to waves. We don't see those waves, but we're in the wave, and the body, it will carry the body. Like, I had exactly that thing. One morning I was waking up and I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking I should get up. And some voice in my head said, "Don't think about that right now." And I went, "Okay." And I blanked out. And then I thought, maybe I should clean out that closet today. Don't think about that right now. Literally, I went through 3 or 4 of these things. Don't think about that right now. And I just went blank. And then suddenly my body just sat up and got out of bed on its own without the command, that I would have normally given. I'm going to get up now. Um, my mind wasn't involved. And I went, wow, this is so cool. And then all day, and like for a week after, I started to notice when my mind said I was going to do something. Like sometimes, I'll see something around the house like that. Oh, I should do that now because I just saw it. And then I went, no, just let the flow take me into the thing that I want to do, and oh, it was such an amazingly um, simple and effortless kind of thing. You don't need the mind so much. People think if you don't have your left brain organizing everything, that you're going to have failure and you'll be a lazy, apathetic person and all that. But no, it's almost the opposite. You
Yeah,
do what
see,
you love and you're super motivated.
yeah, you're one of those people. I think, the way that I draw this line is, I have intuitions to do things and I follow them, like I knew I needed to get to Egypt and I manifested magic to get my butt to Egypt with some of the most incredible people on the planet, learning about what actually went down there. I'm sitting there with astrophysicists, scientists, engineers, mathematicians. It's just ridiculous. And so like I'll have that on a little scale intuitively and then follow it and make the action. And
Yeah.
even like really quick things, but you're one of those people who's actually had the body move. And I know of other people have told me similar stories. And one of the ways that I put it, it's like the body is always the ultimate intelligence. Because if you're, let's say, in a crowd of people and a tiger gets let loose, all of a sudden you might be doing parkour to up and like get up a rope and then hang from something from 2 fingers and then get yourself to a safe spot on a perch, and then maybe 5 to 20 seconds later your mind will come in and just go, what the heck just happened? But the body launches you out, right, without even thinking
Yes,
about it
yes,
before the
yes.
mind comes in wondering what the heck
Right,
just went down, right?
right,
So I think that
right.
we're connecting to these super intelligent spacesuits that we're in,
That's
with
right.
so much intelligence. So I really love that. I was
Yeah.
wondering if you wanted to speak a little bit more when you're like, it gets a little bit heady, but that's what I really like when we're talking about opening this realm of perception. So,
Mhm.
what is that to you? If there's something you wanted to add, how do we do it? And if you could give us at least 1 or 2 experiments, so if somebody's never experienced this before, maybe they can listen to this and try something when the show is done and have a
Mhm.
direct experience because that's where the knowing or gnosis comes, right?
Yeah.
When I'm in Egypt again, another example, people are like telling me what's possible and what's the thing. Is like it's a whole different thing when you're in it and you touch it and you know it, and it's like this intuitive thing that just comes and it resonates your whole body. It's like, you can give me these papers or these things where your belief is, but it's not the same. And I hope that you have the same knowing and you get it from yourself from doing it.
Hmm.
So
Well, what first comes to mind is that I think men and women have slightly different motivations or approaches to some of this, because I've seen a lot of men who want the phenomena. They want to be able to levitate something, or you know, do something really wild, and physical like that. But my path is more of a mystic. And women, I think men kind of separate sometimes out, and they're like monks in caves, where women just dive into the world and they become one with the physical plane. They're um and I think that is the direction that we're moving now, is to join the world, become one with matter, and you know understand what's inside of matter. So um the way that I work with that is in meditation, just to get quiet. First of all, just get centered, get in the body, go into the body and feel it as a brain, a living being, where every single part of it is conscious and sensing things, and it's very loving, and all the parts cooperate with each other. It's just an amazing reality. And and I stop the internal dialogue, and I get deeply quiet, and then I just feel like I expand way, way, way out. And as I do, I'm not trying to change anything. I just feel like, oh, now I'm noticing this, and I enjoy that, and I love that, and here's my coffee cup. And I love my coffee cup because it has energy and consciousness inside of it, and it's here for me today. And it loves me, and I love it. It's like objects are full of awareness. And I go inside objects with my mind, and I see how they're holding themselves in form, and I grant everything life. It's like this really deep mystical connection with life as a living thing, every single part of it. As I do that, then a lot of the forms kind of melt away, and I go into the field, the unified field inside of matter. Now, matter's still out there, but I'm deep down in it, and I can feel light and waves and things moving around, and I can feel myself just all over through the whole thing. It's like I'm not limited to a form. If I want to telepathically talk to somebody, I go into that world and just talk to them, and they get it immediately. There's no distance to cross. So that's maybe that is right brain consciousness. I don't know. But once I can get into that state, I get impressed by patterns of knowledge. I get a sense of being in the imaginal realm in a very conscious way, so that it's almost like sometimes I think of the imaginal realm as kind of a pantry where you have all these ingredients and things on the shelf, and you can pick off this variable and that variable and then put them together and make a whole reality out of it. And then if you're done with it, you put it back on the shelf and get new ones. And it's just this constant creation of anything you want. There are no limits there. You can be as weirdly creative as you feel like being. And there's a freedom in that that's just wonderful. There's, and it's only the limits of our imagination that keep us back, really. So, so once you get into that state of this interconnection, and you realize how, like, let's say how conscious my coffee cup is, and how much it loves me and I love it. Well, then if I wanted it to move across the table, I haven't ever gotten that far, to try to move things with conscious cooperation of mind. But I think that's what psychokinesis would be all about, you know. And when I go into a merger in the field with a lot of other beings, I can almost like come up inside anybody and know what their reality's like, as though it is mine, because at some level it is mine. I can feel empathically anything by merging with it. And then that kind of consciousness leads to psychic abilities, or like levitation or whatever. That's how we get there. You can raise your frequency through putting your attention on a higher vibration and just go there, or you can drop your frequency down and go down inside the earth, or whatever you want to do. But it's all through the power of your mind and concentrating. Once you know how to let go of your limitations. Does this make sense, what I'm saying?
Oh yeah,
To
well,
you?
100%. I just had Tom Campbell on the podcast. He's a physicist that worked with the Monroe Institute of
Oh
Consciousness,
yeah.
and he can astral project like, eating
Right.
Cheerios. It's not even a
Right.
big deal. And he's done it thousands of times, and even a test where he was in one room and his buddies in another room, and they were saying and seeing the same things.
Yeah.
So I'm asking him, how do I do it? I want to do it. How do I do it?
Hmm.
And the son of a gun just tells me, just let go of all of my beliefs and just do it. I'm like, oh man,
Right.
just like let go and do it. Like,
Right. Oh, he's
there's no
saying the
like,
same thing I am.
there's no
Really.
six step process, that
Exactly. You can't do it
I
with
want.
your left brain. You can't
Yeah.
do it with that analytical left brain. There's no, that kind of formula. really doesn't work. Although I'm still talking about a sort of formula of how do you get out of the left brain into this merged um, communion state, really is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like conscious communion with the field, knowing
Mm-hmm.
I am the field. I'm part of it. It loves me. I love it. Everything's interconnected. It's all cooperative. So like sort of like if I need something, I just put it out to the field, the thought, and then everybody out there goes, "Oh, you need that? Okay, fine, here. Have it." It's like if I don't believe that I have to put in my dues or um, earn it or or I don't deserve it, then you could have that. We can create anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that a lot of these things come very naturally to you once you go into greater states of love. Honestly, you can't do it and be really good at it if you're just doing it from your left brain to be like to feed your ego, right? And then you get mistakes and you do harm. A lot of scientists today are into the technology movement without the heart. And I see real dangers in some of the things they're developing because they're going to, you know, anyway, it's like they're not seeing the possible negative repercussions of things because they don't feel it all the way. They just are
Mm-hmm.
doing it with their left brain,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, just to add to your point, they're proving quantum entanglement now and
Hmm.
remote healing. So you hold somebody in
Yeah.
your thought, and then there's actually a measurable effect across the planet instantly. So
Yes,
science is starting to catch up on this, and the way that I recommend to people is it's just imagination for me. Just start
it
with
is.
your imagination
That's
first,
the
and then
real world, Matt. Imagination is the real world,
mm,
where
mm-hmm,
the physical world is just a subset of imagination,
mm.
right? you know, that people think, oh, it's just imagination. No, if you know how to work in that realm, you can create any kind of life you want. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That was wonderful. Oh shoot, I was taking notes. I usually mute it when I was taking notes. That's really good. I was like, that was such a great quote. Was it imagination is a subset or reality is a subset of the
Yeah,
imagination?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. But it just makes sense. Everything comes from imagination first. Yeah,
Mm.
every single thing. It must. And one of my Burning Man lessons I had last year was like I just had this really deep and profound knowing and understanding that everything, and may or may not sound profound to people, but every single thing comes from absolutely nothing. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like a cup. You have to imagine that. Where does that come? It comes from nothing,
Hmm.
absolutely nothing, and
Hmm.
then it becomes something. And I
Yeah.
was just like, really just understood that. And I was like racking my brain around it, but
Yeah.
literally, because even imagination, where are you getting that from the field? And,
Hmm.
with going on this trip, they're talking about unified physics and the unified
Yeah.
field.
Yeah.
And a lot of my work is playing with this field as well. And so,
Yeah.
some of that, to get a little touch of it, is lucid dreaming or
Oh yeah.
even just dreaming in general. And I know you've written a few books, so maybe we can kind of
Hmm.
steer over there and add on
Yeah.
to this if there's anything that you feel like we should have added on to. Um, but we really are playing in these other realms, right? Into our brain. It doesn't know the difference
Hmm.
between dreaming and reality. When I do
No.
visualization with an athlete or I'm coaching someone like a business person, like high level business person, a lot of the times it's showing them a perception. You know what I mean? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
you can only see this model of your whole life going for the next 50 years. And I just
Right.
help them connect to their hearts, show them that there is another reality that they can imagine,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then they can create it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's it's everything. It really is a real
It
space.
is. It is. I think dreaming is like, I think, I have a book called Be the Dreamer, Not the Dream. And it's like all my other books, but it's all about the consciousness of 24-hour consciousness, really. And because I think dreams are totally real. We are moving through different zones of consciousness. We leave the physical one when we go to sleep and we expand our ball and we go out. And, we might, depending on what we need to work on, maybe we'll go to the emotional realm. Maybe we'll go out to the Akashic records, whatever, whatever you need, you'll go in and out through that ball traveling, and every dream you have, you're there doing it, and it's in the imaginal realm, just like we're in the imaginal realm now, but we're doing 3D, you know. um, so I think it's important to look at dreams as all about your own personal process of growth. Almost everything that you dream about is you talking to you about what you could do next to become more transparent, to become more of the true self. Some of those dreams are guidance dreams that come from very high levels. You may have teachers or somebody working with you. I often have, real high level intergalactic beings that come down at every about 5 years or so and do some tweaking on me, and or you may, have emotional dreams where you're going down a muddy river and you have to get to the side, and you're drowning or something. And sometimes you're processing old past life fears, but you're clearing negativity, or you're gaining a vision to grow, you know, because I think if you can get your dream life active and remember it, then you can bring that into your physical life and use this life as a dream, right? And create this life the way you want, and interpret this world and the things that happen as though it is a dream. Because a lot of things happen to us that are a little odd, like symbolic, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Well, I know of people that will do whole courses on dream reality creation. That's essentially, what I'm teaching as well when I teach people to go into a meditative state, imagine the thing, make it real, make it fully immersive.
Mm-hmm.
It's this very
That's it.
similar state to dreaming, lucid dreaming, things like that, and you're
Yeah.
pulling that reality towards you. Do you have
Actually, you're
any?
not. You're actually entering the reality yourself with your attention and
Mm,
fully engaging with it, and making it so that when you put attention on something fully and merge with it, it starts to drop in frequency. And if you keep your attention on it, pretty soon it's almost like you're going down through your brain. You go from the pattern level in the upper brain down through the midbrain, through the senses, and you flesh it out literally. You go from the vision of it down to the tactile feeling of it, the smell of it, and then suddenly your body gets it and says, "Oh, of course this is real." And now, boom, it just happens, you know. But it's all about attention and holding attention gently and lovingly on that reality, like a little movie that you're imagining. But then you have to step inside that little movie bubble and join it and see how it feels. And then maybe while you're joining it, you still keep imagining, refining it, so that it gets better until it's the way you like it. And then you just let it come down and materialize. But I
yeah,
think you've
yeah.
got the main part of it is totally right as far as I understand it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And I think it's really important to when you're imagining these things to make it heart based. So a lot of people will think it's these different external objects. They're just icing on the cake for what our heart really imagines
Right,
and wants to
right.
pull forth. So as you
Yep.
go in and then you're tweaking that reality, it's really getting clear on what is fundamentally most important to you. The dream thing I find fascinating because when I was younger, I could lucid dream on command every night. I was going and flying
Yeah.
around different realms, but it takes me a lot of effort to
Mhm.
to do it. I actually have to put a lot of conscious effort. So I've started to do that lately. And so my process that people can have, if whatever they want, is I'll do a little meditation before I go to sleep, where I'm setting the intention and I see myself in the dream realm. I'll do reality checks throughout the day, which means I'll see if I'm dreaming. So my favorite one is to plug my nose and then I breathe. And I say if I'm breathing, I'm dreaming. So I'm breathing through my nose with my nose plugged. So obviously air doesn't go in. But in the dream state, air goes in, and that's
Uh-huh.
always one that catches me, and I'm like, oh man, like I'm dreaming. It's so real. And so that works for me. And then in the
Interesting.
morning, it's to recall the dream. So that's the process that I do to
Yeah.
get into the dream state. And then once the dreams are recorded, then I can spend, if I have the time, to go in and just kind of see, what the dream might mean for me and symbolism and how I feel about it. And so when I do this whole process, I begin to remember my dreams pretty quickly, and then
Hmm.
actually enter into lucid dreams pretty quickly. So I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if you have any processes that you shared into remembering the dreams, the purpose of the dreams, and maybe working with what's happening in that state.
Um, I think it's an interesting thing to do to redream a dream. One of the processes is take the dream you remember and then back it up, and in your imagination, it's almost like you're meditating. You run the film strip of the dream for as much as you remember, but then you back up before that, the part where you remember, and say, what was happening back here? And you just ask yourself that, and then you'll supply something. Your mind will supply you with some answer. So then you go back to the beginning of that and you run it through all the way through again, and you say, and what happened after I stopped remembering it? What happens next? And you extend the dream. So you get a whole lot more information that way. And you can take it through to a point where you get the lesson or what you were trying to do there. And that really kind of completes it. The other thing you can do is, especially if you have a scary dream or something that's a little disturbing, you can add a third character. Another, it doesn't matter. It could be an animal, it could be Jesus, it could be, a friend or anything. And see what happens when that third entity starts interacting with you and the other people or person in the dream, because it will change the geometry basically of what's going on, and often that will help rectify or give you the lesson of what was going on in the dream. um, but I really, first I try to see, well, where was I? What realm was I in? Was I working on the emotional realm? Was I out getting guidance from my inspirational level? Was I in the Akashic records looking at past lives or the future of the planet? Or, and then, so what am I doing in my other life right now? What am I fascinated with that I'm processing? Because I always want to see, I'm growing at night as much as I am during the day. So I like to continue the daytime process of what I pay attention to all day long, because I do that a lot. I check in constantly. What am I aware of now? Why did I notice this? What's going on with this? And it's a kind of mindfulness, I guess, but it's the Buddhists would call that the path of inquiry, where you dialogue with your inner self. Um, but at night, the same thing is happening, right? So keep it going. And then when you're bringing your dreams back in the morning, well, what was I doing? And this is real. So, so I like that. And then the other thing is, um, especially I used to have a tremendous number of visionary dreams, precognitive things. And sometimes you can't tell, um, whether they are precognitive or symbolic of your own process. And often they're both, that something, if you noticed it, it's in you, right? Like right before 9/11, I had a dream that I was flying up in the top of a tall skyscraper and looking in at the people who were working at these very sterile looking desks. And I thought, these people are out of touch with the earth. And so I went down and flew down, and I got all these little round river rocks, that had been polished and really pretty. And I flew up and I put one by everybody's desk so that they would remember something about nature and the earth. And then after I finished all that, I stood back and I looked at it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's too much weight on the floors now. They're going to collapse. And I flew underneath and looked at the girders and everything. And I said, oh my God, the thing's going to collapse. And I woke up in a panic that the whole building was going to come down. Now, I had no idea that would have been at all precognitive at that time, but I thought it had to do with the business world being out of touch with, you know, some kind of grounding that they needed. And so or maybe I was too much up in my head and I needed the little round river rocks, you know. Um, and yet maybe all those levels were true, right? You know, and maybe the symbolization of 9/11 was even that, you know, that we needed to come back down to earth in some way. So
Wow.
anyway,
That's fascinating. Well, I had on that note, I had John D'Souza on the podcast. He's a former FBI agent, and they did a lot of testing with students before and after 9/11, and a lot of these kids had precognitive dreams, and they were trying to figure
yeah,
out information from an FBI perspective if they had known something, right? To
yeah,
catch to catch the people, because some of the information they had. So that's a very common thing. And um, uh, shoot, blanking on his name, but I had someone from the Global Consciousness Institute, Roger Nelson, from the Global Consciousness Institute, and that's where they look at random number generators. And
oh
so
yeah,
when
hmm
9/11 happened and these big events, it becomes less random, which is interesting. It just shows that we really are connected, and
yeah,
we live in a very mysterious universe. But I think the bottom line of going through your dreams and processes is, what does it mean to you? What is it showing you? And having that process of you being your own master, asking yourself, rolling it around, thinking about it, because that's the most important thing. We're programmed to look outside of ourselves. Hey, Matt, can you analyze my dreams for me? No, analyze your own dreams. You know what I mean? Like, that is
right,
the best guide. You're the best guy. I can give you what I think, but, like, you know what I mean? Maybe a yellow kitten means something different to me. Maybe you had a yellow kitten, you know what I mean? Maybe,
yeah.
who
It's
knows? Who
always
knows?
either archetypal, universal, or personal, you know, and subjective, and
Mm.
both at the same time. And yeah, um, I forgot what I was going to say too, but anyway,
It's,
we're on the
short
same
circuits.
wavelength of spacing out somewhere to get something.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, we've touched on a lot of interesting things. One thing I did want to talk about was your book,
Yeah.
Frequency, because that was a
Mm,
bestseller. You got the forward
yeah.
written by Bernard Beckwith. That's not a
Yeah.
slouchy
Michael
thing to
Beckwith.
receive.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I really like, it's the title of it, it's Frequency. And, Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, thinks in terms of frequency and vibration. And
hmm
so it talks about your personal vibration. And for me, vibrational state, love is the highest state, fear and anger probably the lowest.
Yeah.
It's a pretty opposite end of the spectrum, but most people aren't aware of how they feel, and their feeling is their vibrational state. So I'm wondering if you can give like a brief synopsis of that book and some of the things and tidbits you offer there, maybe one
Mm.
super tidbit, because I know there's probably lots of love and research in there, but just for just for the podcast.
I like that term. A super
Super
tidbit.
tidbit.
It's kind of like the, what do they,
Yeah.
I forget the word for
Not
that,
your
where it's
average,
like a
not your average
giant
tidbit.
shrimp, you know, like,
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
um, well, part of what I'm talking about in there is that, of course, everything vibrates, right? You know, everything's got its own frequency, and and so do we. Um, but we are kind of tribal, and I think we've learned over the years that to stay safe, we unconsciously adjust our frequency to match the people that we're around, so that we stay in harmony and we don't get ostracized and, you know, hurt or rejected. And so we're constantly, you know, shifting our vibration as we go through the day, depending on what we're around. You watch the news, you go down, you know, you get excited about some new idea, you go up. And that is draining. It's incredibly draining. And that's when you look outside yourself, as though there's some outside world out there that you need to match in order to stay safe, which is an old concept, right? Um, and it's very debilitating because you can't actually feel who you are, because you're always projected out into trying to read somebody or please somebody or get away from somebody or whatever. So the other thing opposite of that is what I've called your home frequency, which is, it's really the vibration of your soul in your body. It's your true self grounded in your personality, being authentic, being transparent. And that home frequency, sometimes I call that your preferred state. That we all have a way we like to feel when we're feeling our best and good and happy and creative, or accepting, various things. And we have different ways at arriving at the experience of that. Um, Sometimes for me, my home frequency, I can tune into it by just feeling cheerful. If I'm upset and bothered and I just get into a cheerful mood, I kind of slide back into um, kind of a warm, sometimes if I try to picture it, it feels like warm, buttery kind of quality, or a Angora kitty soft quality or something, like there's a texture to it. And I can tune into those textures or qualities and I can feel good again. Um, I remember talking to this woman about what she thought hers felt like, and she was a dancer. So she said, "Oh, it's just I just go like this, and like made this figure eight movement with her hands and this rocking thing." And so that was it for her, when she could move into that flow. But everybody has their way of remembering how that feels. But you look in a baby's eyes and there it is. It's not covered over yet. And so when you feel into somebody, I always try not to just go by the outer coating, but go down into the core and see, what do they really feel like inside, their true self. um, and so you can choose to feel your home frequency, and you don't have to ever leave that. And if you get around somebody in a bad mood, they don't have the power to shift you out of that if you don't want them to. You know, you are at choice about how you want to feel, and that is your power. Is that I can choose how I want to feel, and I do not want to get all negative about politics, although I'm not going to be apathetic about it either, but I'm going to stay in my true knowledge about how spirit feels when it comes into my reality, when I'm spirit based. Um, and so I think that's an important thing. It's like key thing, when you get centered, go back into your home frequency. And if you need to solve a problem or do a creation or do an athletic performance or whatever, start from there. And then you're clear again. If you try to solve problems from your left brain when you're all complicated, you're not going to get a very good answer.
Mm.
So yeah, so that's a big thing, I think.
Well, I like the point you touched on there about how you have to lower your frequency through choice, and I think that um, we have this kind of empathetic and tribal thing where we do lower our frequency to match
Yeah,
because we don't want to be different, or we think we're making them feel better by going down, to their
yeah,
level. But the way that I explain it is, if you have a kid, right, and your son or daughter or your best friend or whoever, they break their leg and they're in pain, it's like awful.
yeah.
Like, oh my God, your leg is all busted up. You don't go break your leg too to make them feel
No, right,
better,
right,
but we're
right.
we're doing that on an emotional scale, and the actual best thing that you can do is holding the frequency of your highest vision for yourself, because then you're
Got it.
entraining them on what is possible,
Right. Or
and
you
they're
give them a
they're
choice
seeing
to,
that.
yeah, you give them a choice then to feel their version of that, right? They don't have to be like you, but they have their own version of that, and I think we're too anxious to rescue people because through empathy and through frequency matching, if somebody's suffering, or like a professional victim or something, they're going to try and drag you down to their level so that they'll feel comfortable because you're the same way they are. If you're too high, they'll feel threatened. So then they'll try to get you to come down by criticizing you, belittling you, whatever, right? And if you don't do it, they'll reject you, right? Because a lot of people like that. So you cannot force someone to raise their vibration, but you can hold your own. And if they're interested in changing, they will. If they're not interested, they will either leave or they'll reject you. It's all about frequency matching and frequency sorting. I find, like, as our own vibration starts to go up now, it's very common that we don't fit with certain friends anymore, or we don't fit in the job we had anymore, and we get rejected. And then we think, oh, there's something wrong with me. No, you just have moved to a higher frequency beyond that group of people, and they aren't going to go with you. They don't want to go with you. Other people will say, oh, you're doing that. Oh, I'd like to learn that. And then they'll go with you. But you have to watch the choices people make, I think, to see who they really are. And you don't want to really hang around with people who don't want to grow, because they'll just drag you down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a real big challenge for a lot of people, is letting that go. For me, luckily, my friends didn't understand me from the beginning. So, 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 like, they're just like, oh man, you're weird. And that's fine. Like, I have really great friends, but like, you get entrenched in a way, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
you're different. Then you lose your friends, and you want to keep your friends. You love your friends.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be different from them. And it's just different. And you're gonna lose some people, and you're gonna gain some people, but you got to
That's it.
honor yourself. And it's not better or worse. You're just, it's honoring yourself. But if you turn, you're gonna meet a different group of people who go to a bar at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday every single day and are sad, than
Yeah.
people who, maybe came out of, like, I don't know, Tony Robbins, thing, or rather,
Or they're
just use
jacking
Tony.
themselves up to a high
Yeah,
level through
totally. Yeah,
willpower.
totally. Right.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's
Right. So.
bad too. That's not it either. You know, I think that whole thing of matching people with a lower vibration is commiseration. There's a whole word for it, commiserating with someone. Oh, let's share our misery and our bad luck stories and our illnesses. And we'll be in
Mhm.
that swamp together. Um, and you just get to a point where why bother? Like, if they want to stay there, I'm sure they'll find other people who will match their frequency, and they can do it until they're sick of it, and then they'll get out of it in their own time period. But
And
I
I
can't
think,
save everybody. I can't do it for everybody. I can, we can put out what we're into, and people will find us, and we'll find them. It's not
yeah,
even that we attract them anymore. I think, because that law of attraction, I always kind of take issue with that term, because there's no outside world to attract anybody from. It's more, now I call it the law of emergence, because we're in
mhm,
a field together, and people appear out of the field when you achieve the same frequency. You have a kind of convening of people who are on your wavelength. And I see that happening now a lot. Suddenly, and people of all ages that I resonate to, there's no age thing anymore. It's just, souls who are kind of at the same level are finding each other. I think that's so wonderful. Even little kids, like, that I just feel like soulmates with, so.
mhm. I was gonna say, just on that, on the process of, say, switching frequencies. What I've noticed,
Mhm.
maybe it's possible to do it another way, but you essentially have to go all in, and you are alone. That's kind of like your test, it seems. You know what I mean? You can't,
Mhm.
like, have one foot over here and one foot over here. It doesn't work the same. You got to jump all in,
Yeah.
and that's the faith that you're going to be taken care of, that it's going to work out. If you have a terrible
Mhm.
job and it sucks and you hate it, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And then it's,
Yeah.
well, if you quit it, you've given yourself a test to find a job that is more aligned. It
Mhm.
could not work out at all. I don't know, but you're giving yourself a chance, right? But you
Yeah.
see, the people that I know that have switched frequencies all had to make a leap of faith. So I think that's
Yeah.
important, to trust yourself, to trust where you're aiming, to trust in the universe in that way. In the worst case, you're going to get a lesson, and you're going to see what you're capable of. You're capable of. I think
Yeah.
people don't understand how really capable they are. Um,
Right.
and
Well, part of that is, at the end of that cycle of, if you lose your job, let's say, or end a relationship, um, you have to, at that point, there's a point where you have to say, look at what I've just created. I've been working on this, and I did it, and I'm successful, and I've learned all these things, and it's been wonderful. And not to make it wrong when you're at the end of a cycle, but then just let go and go into that open imaginal realm and rest. And that's your cue to get out of your left brain thinking, oh, what will be next? I've got to create the next thing right now and have form. Instead, no, you need space at that point. You need to go into the openness, rest, let yourself gestate some new ideas, and the ideas will come to you. You don't have to do all the work. Your soul, your deep self will like bubble these things up, and then you go, oh wow, what about that's an interesting idea, and then you start following your curiosity into the new cycle, But I think people don't take the time at the end of creative cycles to be satisfied with what they created, enjoy it, get the lesson from it, and relax a minute so that they can have that um, fertile space in order for the new thing to come into it, you know, which is really what you were saying.
I was taking notes. Yeah, somebody keep going. Yeah, totally. I 100% as it's super important because we're programmed, get up, do the thing, right? People are uncomfortable with space, they're uncomfortable with silence, and
Yeah,
that's where
yeah,
you receive, you know what I mean?
yeah.
You have to have that. You're basically gestating the new idea. You're allowing that cycle to come to an end, but it's like, oh my God, I've been out of work for 1 week. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I've had jobs, I'll stay out of work forever. 6 months of chilling is no problem for me. You know what I mean? But
Hmm. Hmm.
until I get super, super, super clear. And now, I work my butt off, but it's all stuff that I'm super passionate about. And it's
Yeah.
problem solving. Usually it's like the money problem solve. It's like, oh, I've made a lot of this content. Wait, I got to figure out how to monetize something because I got to get over
Hmm.
here. And so,
Uh-huh.
I scheme a little bit, but as the
Yeah.
cycles, process, you need to have that stillness when you've created and you're like, what am I going to create next? Because when you're in it, it's going to be a build. It could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be more.
Mhm.
But you want to get clear, and in that stillness, you really begin to know. And that's when you
Yeah.
can really go all out when you're in it. So I totally
And
agree.
it's when you get synchronicities and sort of sometimes magical things that just you need something, oh, it falls in place. I noticed when I started, and I've been self-employed for so long, but when I need clients, I'll just say, oh, I'm I've had enough alone time or rest time. I want to get busy again. And then the phone starts to ring. And at another point, I'm like, I am so overwhelmed with talking. I don't want to talk anymore. I'm sick of it. It stops. And it's just like, oh, okay. And I used to freak out because, oh, I'm not getting anybody coming to me. And then oh, wait a minute, I didn't want anybody. Right. So you have to get aligned with what you are creating. And often you create from an unconscious place. Sometimes if you're not conscious of the soul's creating anyway, but it's unconscious. The more you get clear with yourself, then you realize what you're doing, and that's so much nicer.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 100% agree. It's, yeah. And, um, basically, I think the clarity is the big part, right? You know what I mean? Sometimes we're just, that for me, what I'll do consistently is reprocess, what is it that I'm creating, what's most aligned, because it changes a lot,
Hmm.
right? And so
Hmm.
like you talked about earlier, the refinement process, and the more you
Yeah.
can be conscious of what you're creating and looking at your daily life and say, wow, I've created the same thing every day for the last week, month, 10 years,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
I'm not happy about. Whoa, you know what I mean? What do I want? And then you can, then now you're bringing in new energy and to
Right.
create
Right.
what you would prefer, right? And
Yeah.
thank the lesson of that challenge or whatever it's gifted you. Um,
Exactly.
you, you know, we talked about so many wonderful things on this, and I could go deep on dreams. Every one of your books, I want to go deeper on. But I wanted to kind of launch out and see if you can summarize as much as you can. But if we're going into this transparency realm and the most out there thought, where do you see where we're going as an individual and a species, and what we can sign up for, and how do we what's the best way to come into alignment with that highest transparency, awakening, activating these skills,
Mm.
processing our fear and trauma,
Yeah.
from your perspective?
Well, I think where we're going, let's just assume that we are clearing the fear and that we're getting unencumbered by those wet blankets, and so the soul energy, being us, can now express itself freely. But remember that the soul is connected to all souls, and at one level it's an individual experience, and then just a hair shift to the right, and it's everybody. I am the whole thing, right? And I'm an individual. So you end up feeling like I'm being sourced by something very, very wise that knows all about evolution. Everybody's helping me. And if I sacrifice myself and I don't put myself out fully, then I'm not helping them either, because they need what they're putting in me so that I can put it out for them. So I need to express myself fully, and I want to. So you get into this kind of state of mind where you really have a deep felt sense of how mutually supportive every single thing in the world is. And you feel taken care of. You relax deeply, and you feel empowered and entitled to have so much more. And it's not about needing a lot of material goods or anything. And you may have them, but you may lose them and you may get them again. You don't care that much about that. It's more about experiences, having the kind of experiences you need to develop the consciousness you need, and creativity becomes the fun game. Oh, let's solve the energy crisis. Sure, let's get our minds together, because guess what? We're a group mind. I'm connected to a group mind, and we all have pieces of the puzzle. So let's get together and bring down a solution. And I think that's going to happen more and more, where we're not just individuals out, being entrepreneurs or solopreneurs on our own. We're doing that, yes, but we're also doing a lot of these kind of co-creative ventures, international ventures and things, where our work dovetails with everybody else's, and we're doing joyful work, that becomes genius. And so there'll be a level of um, quality that comes out of joy, where compassion becomes the evolutionary force. You know, it's not about material gain, because why? You can have any kind of material world you want. You don't have to gain anything. It's like, what am I going to hoard gold? Why? Why? What would that get? What experience would that give me? I might as well have the experience without having to hoard the gold. You know. Um, anyway, so I think where we're headed is this kind of. It feels almost magical when you think of it now. How easy and fluid things can be. But to get there, we're going to go through a, I think, a period of difficult kind of birth canal. I've had a sense that a lot of people will die on the planet, and that the Earth is going to. I mean, I have this at the end of my book, Frequency, this visionary dream I had about the Earth separating into two Earths, bifurcating. That we were going to go through this kind of event where it's almost like time would stop for a moment. There would be no linear time. It would be just nothing, just the all that is. And if you're not holding on to any clutter or any fixed ideas or anything from the past, you'll just blink out and experience that and blink back in and not know anything has changed. But during that fraction of a whatever, um, a whole lot of energy will have flooded into the world. And I think that the physical world will shift into an almost semi-physical kind of state or something. It'll be, the reality will really shift. But the people who can't make that change because they're too fixed in an old reality may they may die and then get just suddenly reincarnate on a planet that's of their own vibration. So it's like no big loss really. Everybody's still connected, but we're living according to our own frequencies now. But you can almost feel it at this moment that we're starting that separating of the realities. Like you're looking at some of the people in politics and you're going, wow, they are just not getting it, like this is old dinosaur thinking, we're already way beyond this. Um, so I think we are going to, and maybe this is not an all at once experience, but it happens over time. And it could be, 9/11 maybe had a big instigation function in getting this to happen. I'm not sure. Um, but I know that in the dream, I knew that this event was happening and this was going to happen in our lifetimes. And I was so excited, I could hardly stand it in the dream. And I thought, how did I ever forget that this was going to happen? Like I totally, like veiled it off from my memory until now. And I remembered that now's the time for it. And um, so I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
Yeah, no,
um,
definitely. Well,
you know,
Dolores Cannon talks about that in her book. She talks about like
mm,
kind of the earth dividing, right, like a
yeah,
cell split. And I
parallel
believe
worlds. Yeah.
and I believe it talks about it in the Law of One material as well. And
Oh.
then in the Bible, it talks about the harvest.
Hmm.
So, from my perspective and everything that I have looked at, I definitely resonate with that. And you're
Hmm.
starting to see this split. And I see the split into cooperation, collaboration, love,
Hmm.
compassion on one side, and just rigid thinking, fear, control, like all.
Self-protection,
So
domination. Yeah.
ideally, you know what I mean, old
Yeah.
stuff, because that, we
Yeah.
we should be past that, right? We're
Yeah.
ready,
The old
so.
stuff is, I talk about that a lot too, is the fight or flight, adrenal stuff where you go into avoidance. So, I mean, look at like the opioid addiction that's happening now. I mean, addiction is getting, people are just leaving their bodies. They don't want to have to deal with the energy.
Hmm.
Or they're just digging in and becoming really stubborn about making their own reality be the only reality, and everybody's going to have to adapt to me, and that's the fight mentality, basically,
Hmm.
you know. And so we're seeing that, very much in the news today. And so that we're not participating in either of those polarities. We're at the third point above that polarity, taking a higher view, you know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And yeah, and for me, like the takeaway, just from my perspective, it's just choosing love and compassion, choosing love and
Yeah.
compassion and
Hmm.
cooperation and growth to the best of your ability. And if you can do that, you're moving in that direction. There's nothing that you need to worry about. And even if
Yeah.
it's a huge miss, that's not bad. You know what I mean? If I'm going to miss, I'll miss that way. I'm okay with that. But it just seems to
Right.
be in alignment. It makes sense. It feels good.
Hmm.
It's allowed me, beautiful experiences on the planet, that I've been grateful to have, and the experts that I've had on the show, you and from my travels, everybody seems to be in that same idea. People who are
Hmm.
living beautiful lives, who really enjoy their existence, who are really grateful, operate under these fundamentals. And the people who really struggle with depression and anxiety and fear,
Hmm.
and they're operating under different fundamentals, and it's just their experience. So, do you want to choose the joyful, harmonious, loving experience, or do you want to choose the opposite of that, and learn
Yeah.
from it for as long as you wish? And now it's becoming a choice. But
It
now the
is a
stakes
choice.
are getting higher. So maybe you really want
That's
to
right. It
think
really
about.
is a choice. If you don't choose, then your life, I mean, you can always have free will, but I almost kind of think that what you do in the present, there is no future anymore. It's like what
Hmm.
you choose now is it, and it
Hmm.
will set certain realities for you. It is a choice. And that choice really is the home frequency, which you're taught, it has all those qualities, love and wisdom and connection and unity and all that. Um, and that is the reality I choose every moment that I can remember to choose it. And of course, I get knocked off center by the world, but I come back quickly, and I don't feed the reality of the negativity as much as I can avoid it. I just don't put energy into it by placing attention on it for too long. I don't avoid
Exactly.
it out of fear, because that's placing attention on it in the negative way, right? I just get bored with it, and I'm like, yeah, that's not my thing, and let it go, no charge on it.
And I think too,
Yeah.
just to add to this point, I can just kind of think about a listener's mind in this. Um, there's no how-to manual at this point. The how-to manual becomes you and what comes from you and what comes from source. That's the
Hmm.
ultimate teacher you're creating in that moment, So just
Right.
remembering there are beautiful teachers like yourself out there, many others that you can get guidance from, but you're the ultimate teacher. You don't need all the books
Yep.
could burn, right? But you go this
Right.
route
Right.
and you are the teacher and source is going to give you what you need. And that's that whole,
Right.
beautiful rediscovery of yourself
Right.
and of your connection with all things, God,
Yeah.
nature, source, whatever you want to call it. But it's very real and very beautiful and
Yeah.
keep you on the right track.
Yeah. I don't think we need the middleman, the priests anymore.
Yep.
Honestly, we've got a direct connection. So, you know,
Yep.
that's the new
Totally.
path, I think. Yeah.
Hmm. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for
You're
sharing your
welcome.
wisdom and doing this since, well, probably before 1977, but in it, I was having a conversation today about like we need, some wisdom keepers sharing the knowledge because there's a lot of, 20 to
Yeah.
30-year-olds and I'm only 33 and I would say that I'm super
Hmm.
new in this. I've been dedicated my whole life, but I'm still new and 20 years from now I'm going to be at a whole
Yeah.
nother scale of
Oh,
wisdom.
yeah. Yeah, you will.
So,
I was told
thank
when
you.
I was 33, I was told by somebody who was a medium that it's a very important year in your life where you make a decision about how long you're choosing to stay on the planet,
Mm,
and it's a commitment year to your spiritual life, basically.
mm,
It's kind of the Christ consciousness year. So,
mm-hmm.
yeah, think
Right.
about
Well, you're
that
gonna have
because
to.
it's a
Yeah.
powerful year.
We'll chat after. We'll see if I got any notes for me, like with contracts. Like, do you want to stay or should I just bounce and just go to like let everybody figure it out? I've laid my staple. You want to find out, what I was about? There you go. It's challenging here. It's freaking hard.
I made those podcasts. Yeah.
I know it's deal with a lot of baloney to try to do this. So, but it's very beautiful and expanding too. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on and all you've
Yeah.
done. And just invite. How do people get a
Thanks,
hold of
Matt.
you if they want to check out
Yeah,
your books and
easy
your
way,
work? And
just through my website, which is just my name, pennypeirce.com. It's spelled oddly. It's Penney and then PeiRce, Penney Peirce. But
awesome,
there's all kind, I do private sessions and all the books are available and there's a bunch of free stuff on there. So,
right
yeah.
on,
Yeah,
cool. Thanks so
good.
much.
You're
Cool. Well,
welcome.
thank you for coming on, and thanks everybody out there for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode. Peace.